I don't need their business, but I like to help people, and I wear my heart on my sleeves when we're doing that. And as we go through the process, if we're focused on you, the candidate, that's the guardrails that keep us getting to the right place at the end.
And enjoy the Never Been Promoted YouTube channel. Hey, welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast YouTube channel. We're going to do a special episode today on buying a franchise. So first and foremost, franchising is a really good path to get into entrepreneurship. It is one that a lot of people look at, but I want you to be cautious. There are a lot of less than, honest people who are in the business. There are plenty that are, but there is a lot of nonsense that goes on. And I have a special guest today of David Greenberg. He is truly the GOAT of franchising. And I met him the way that you're supposed to, which is when I did research and I was trying to find the best in class people to meet to understand of what I should do for franchising. So if you're getting calls, hey, buy a franchise, or you're getting a bunch of unsolicited DMs, you've never met the person, and you check them out and they don't seem like they have all the information, which pull the horses back and find a really good person. But I'm going to introduce somebody to you with David, and we're going to go through the 6 steps today to buying a franchise. So David, thank you so much for agreeing to come on here and walk us through the 6 steps you need to go do when you're considering buying a franchise.
Absolutely, Thomas. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and listen, I know David for about a year now. We've gotten to know each other, and that's not unlikely, by the way. So there are a lot of people who read content for a year. There's a lot of people who maybe even have interactions until they're to the point financially or in the position of their life to buy a franchise. David and I have gotten to know each other because I love the guy, I trust him. And so he's here is someone I absolutely trust. If you're going to be doing the franchise route, I don't know where else you'd start. This isn't a paid advertisement. This is truly like really good information you can use for learning how to buy a franchise, if it's right for you and everything else. So let's dive in. First of all, David, what's the first step they should take to start the process?
Well, I love the thought about process because this is due diligence. You are about to make an investment or think about making an investment that's fairly significant, and it truly can change your life. So due diligence is the word that I really like to put against this process. And you asked me what the first step is. The first step for anyone that works with me is their due diligence. I do not call anyone to see if they're interested in becoming a franchisee. They call me after they've done their due diligence about me, Dave Greenberg, about Empower Franchisee, my business, and understand what I can actually do to help them. But most importantly, in their due diligence and finding me, they've already established trust.
Well, that's the point. So, people get called for all kinds of things, right? Explain to me why that's a negative, because some people will be like, what's the big deal? If you called somebody, I guess, would you be in that bucket, or why do you say, and why is it sketchy?
Most people kind of poking around, explore the opportunities in franchising. Their best friend is Google. So they start poking around, Biz Buy Sell, all those sites, and they put their name in and their information in. And then all of a sudden, their name and information gets broadcast to many different people. It could be a franchise consultant, it could be a franchise broker, it could be a business broker, but you're setting yourself up for all that inbound assault of phone calls. And I would say, stop.
There's sites that, and I wasn't aware of this, so they're just basically lead generation sites, and they're going to go resell your stuff. So you're giving your information with the idea that you want people to contact you, but what you're going to get an onslaught of are people just trying to make commissions and not really have your best interest potentially in mind.
Well, yeah, I think most people that will contact you have their best interests in mind because, I have colleagues in this business and they truly want to work people through the process. The thing about the decision we're going to make together and help you work through a due diligence process is a very big decision. So usually people aren't selling anything, but what people are looking for is people who have a real interest in exploring entrepreneurship through franchise ownership. And unfortunately, a lot of people think Google's their best friend and it turns them into their enemy because as soon as you drop your information into those websites, boom, it gets shotgun all over the place. And people like myself, buy those leads. But let me correct it. I do not buy leads. People come to me already researched about who I am, what I do, what I have to offer. And I think that's the level of trust you need to establish before the very first step in our process, which is a 15-minute initial call, Thomas. All I want is 15 minutes of your time if you think you have an interest in exploring franchise opportunities. In that 15 minutes, It's the first step to deciding whether or not it makes sense to work together.
Right. And so what you're doing, and I'm going to just take this away. So your precursor is you may make the mistake already, or you're out there. Pick whomever. Just make sure the person you're picking has some type of reputation. It's clear they're in the space, they know what they're doing, and they're not just fly by night. Or they have just a little bit more information than you. You're saying do a little research, a little due diligence, and start with a 15-minute call to someone that you believe you can trust.
And ultimately, the people that you're going to trust are the people that have similar experience. I'm a corporate executive, turned entrepreneur, turned into a multi-unit franchise owner. Now I help people do the same, leveraging my decades of experience for no cost.
In 15 minutes, walk me through what happens in the 15. How do you determine if someone's the right stuff? Or they like, how does that happen so quickly?
Well, the most important thing, I equate this to a dating game. You gotta have a rapport, right? Do we get along? Do we have chemistry? Do we understand each other? Then I want to know, okay, what inspired you to give up 15 minutes of your life to talk to David Greenberg? And they tell me, they say, hey, listen, I'm in a transition. Hey, I'm about to sell my company. Hey, I'm a free agent. Hey, I want a second revenue stream. I want a side hustle. And all of a sudden that comes out. And then I say, okay, great. Well, let me tell you how I help people. And then at the end of the call, you can tell me if it makes sense to work together, and then we'll discuss next steps.
And that's pretty straightforward. There's no risk. You're going to learn something there. I think that's interesting because, and I think what you key on there is it's short. You can ascertain very quickly, because you know what you're doing clearly, of what needs to be asked to understand if that person's actually serious or in that moment. And if someone's kind of in between, what do? Do you send them, do you just help say, hey, listen, here's some education, so when you're ready, you come back? Or what's the right move there if someone's like, I really don't know?
Well, some people want to just explore lists of franchises. I say, you know something? Go to the Entrepreneur 500 top franchise list. It's a marketing list. Have a party, work through it. And then when you're ready and want to think about it in more depth, in a more focused way, come see me. Because you don't know if it's an owner-operator or executive model business. You don't know if it's available in your territory, what the investment thresholds are, all those things. So I said, do your research. Go read my blogs. I produce one every Saturday for the last 5 years. You can read till the cows come home about my approach to helping people become franchisees and my approach as a franchisee myself.
All right, so you get through this call, there's interest, there's some level of, seems like there's financial capability, there's personal interest, the parties that were there. In the intro call though, do I take it? Do I bring my CFO? That's my wife. Who should go to that intro call?
Well, the first thing is, okay, if it makes sense to work together, let's do two things. I'm gonna ask you to fill out a questionnaire. It's gonna take you 10 or 15 minutes. It's gonna prepare you for a consultation call that takes 90 minutes. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to look at the questionnaire once you get back to me, and we're going to spend 90 minutes working together. Before we get to the process, which I want to talk about with you, of investigation or due diligence, whatever you want to call it, we need to figure out what business characteristics you want to align.
What do you mean by that? So give me an example of my characteristics.
What part of the labor pool do you want to work with? Do you want to work with the $15 an hour labor pool? Do you want to work with the licensed technician that drives a $40 to $50 an hour rate, or somewhere in between? So you get to choose what part of the labor pool you want in your business. That's a defining characteristic. You get to choose how much time you have to invest in a business. That's a defining characteristic. You get to choose whether you want to focus on a business at B2B or B2C, whether it's service-based business, essential services, or bricks and mortar, self-care. You get to choose. So we'll sit through those and actually define the business characteristics that you want to see in your business that you will own someday. Then I go back and I go into the pool of 200 franchisors. I see what's available and I see what makes sense. And that's where we start the due diligence.
And so that's when you determine time, how much money you're thinking of investing, all in, and you get a sense of, they came in maybe with this idea or that, and you're like, things that are going to work are these, and here's why.
Right.
So you come back with a list that's based on your specs. This is what it is. And I guess somewhat of a rhetorical question there, but what do you do in that moment when someone has the passion, they're all focused on what they know versus the business they probably should buy? Does that happen at this part, or does this happen later?
If you're working with me, there's a couple things you're going to set aside. And one, everyone's a pretty smart person that I met with, right? They've built up their skill set and experience for a long time, but you have to set aside preconceived notions. You have to go in with a blank slate, okay? You have to also acknowledge that this is a learning process. You can't be the smartest guy in the room. No one wants that person as a part of their business, right? So you got to learn. No preconceived notions. You have to learn. And as you're working through that learning process, you have to look at more than one opportunity because one will put the other in context. Are you comfortable with customer acquisition, or do you want to lean towards recurring revenue, which is maybe in the B2B space versus B2C space? So those are the things. Are you okay with sales? What kind of fears do you have? What's your risk tolerance? So that all goes back into what I said, building the definable characteristics about the business model. Once we define those, we'll go back to them, because if you shift, people shift, but what did we get wrong? I don't think we'll get it wrong. I rarely do. But as we peel back the onion through the due diligence, you need to set aside those preconceived notions, and you need to be in a learning frame of mind.
Do you find it, just before we get to kind of the due diligence piece, just you have to have open cup and I get the smartest, but do you find that the most successful franchisees have an experience in the market they pick, or is it usually the ones that have come out and said, I'm just going to follow this playbook? And at the end of the day, because this might help someone set the framework of, you want to be successful, typically it's not something or it is.
So industry experience, not required, okay? You have to be a good person. You have to be able to lead teams and manage people. You have to be able to interact with customers or hire someone to do that. So you need that skill set that you typically built up as a leader or a manager or executive or whatever, or a CEO of the family. You need to take that skill set and apply it. And that's what we'll work towards, as opposed to being an expert in the industry. I'm from the car business. I'm in the beauty and wellness space. Go figure. The other thing I want to say about, as you go to this process, you don't have to think what they've already thought out, all right? It's a proven business concept. So don't overthink it. Understand it and execute it and believe in it. And one thing, don't follow your passion, because that's where you're going to pour money down the drain.
All right, that's great. So let's move forward to the due diligence. So you've established there's some level in this 15-minute and then a follow-up. Let's get into the weeds a bit. Is this point where you come in, there's like 4 or 5 that you go over that they've said, hey, I'd like to talk about this one and this one, and in that meeting, and then now you're into a new due diligence? Is that generally how that works?
Yeah. After my consultation call, I go back and do some work. Probably, within less than a week, I'll come back and say, I want 40 minutes of your time. In that 40 minutes at a time, I'm going to bring 3 or 4 opportunities that are available in the market that are a really good fit, and then we'll start the due diligence process.
All right. So you ask the questions, you guide them through. These are interesting, but it's also, that might not be it. You might go through 3 or 4 and they're like, I don't really want any of those for these reasons. You go back to the pool and nothing may be available. So you may return back at some point and say, hey, a new one came up. Let's take a look at this one because it fits your piece. Is that a fair possible route?
Rarely regroup with someone, because that means we really missed the mark. Someone in the process somewhere was not truthful, not with malintent. It just, something didn't work and it was broken for some reason. I want to figure out why it was broken and why we didn't get a match.
Is one of those reasons I can't see myself in the beauty wellness? I can't tell people that I own a nail salon or something. Like, is that part of the reason where people now backtrack based on?
I'll ask people during the process, are you okay with dirty jobs? Does the brand matter? So we'll dig that out. And, I will bring up some examples generic to talk that through. A lot of people say, well, it needs to resonate with me. And I say, okay, well, what needs to resonate with you? You told me that you wanted to get a good return on your investment and do something for the community. You didn't tell me that you didn't want to be in the beauty and wellness space.
Right. And that's great, because I could see myself going, oh, I got to say I own that. So that's good to know before you do all the work.
I flesh that out very hard, because I think it's good time is the one thing we don't get back. So let's be efficient. Let's be really transparent. Let's work through this process together and get it right up front.
Okay, so that's your kind of step one, introductory. There's a series of progressive calls that you're learning more, everyone's learning more, everyone's getting closer to what we're going to look at next in the second step, where the due diligence begins. You've selected 1, 2 things you might want to look at this next step, or what's usually the? Let's
dive into the franchise investigation process, what I also call your due diligence. It's a blind date. I'm going to bring 3 or 4 concepts to you. You're going to set up an intro call, and you're going to get to know these people. Why? Because franchises are awarded, not bought.
Oh, so you're doing an intro call not with you. You've already established there's interest. You're actually going to meet with the franchisor, is that right, or Eve?
I introduce them to the franchise development director.
the people who are actually going to award it to you, they like you and you like them?
They're going to work through the process with you, presenting their franchise opportunity. And there's going to be 3 or 4 franchise development directors. You're going to need 3 to 5 time hours during the week, during normal business hours. If you can't take calls during normal business hours, just stop the process because you won't be able to manage the business that way. So it's really important. Yes, you will speak to 3 or 4 franchise development directors, and you and I will talk once a week for 25 minutes as we work through the process.
That's a really good point, by the way. And in my own process of going through this, I didn't have time even to take the calls. And I said, hey, I got to back out. I don't have time for this. This is something I want to do, but the reality is I don't have time for where my head is. And you're absolutely right. And it wasn't a mean thing. Everyone involved said, thank you for doing that, because they're not wasting anybody's time. Because if you don't have time, even if you're about to have time because you're about to retire, just wait till you actually have time to focus on it and get through that season of your life. And when you're in these kind of initial calls with the franchise, this is the introductory call to them. So you had some precursor work. The step 1 is the intro call to them. I think I misunderstood that. So the first step is actually just getting the list ready. The first step to actually buying is now you're meeting the people who are going to award this franchise. What's most critical thing to do and not do in that meeting is as a potential person who wants to be selected versus, because they're going to be in the meeting alone.
So you're representing yourself and you want to protect your time and investment. What does a franchisor want to do? You want to protect their brand. So show up on time, because if you show up on time for the meetings, that's how you're going to show up for your customers and your employees. Brush your teeth, comb your hair, be ready to go, because that's how you will run your business. Same thing goes for the franchisors. We all need to show up and be ready to partake in this mutual elimination process. This is so important. How people behave in the process is reflective of what kind of business partner they're going to be. If you can't get to the end of the process and make a decision, guess what? You're not going to make a decision as a business person in a franchise, so it's probably not good that you move forward. Many times, people move their calls twice with me. I'm like, hey, listen, no, that doesn't work because you're not ready. If you can't commit the time, call me back when you're ready, because we don't have time to waste.
All right, so you do the intro call. What's a few questions you absolutely need to be asking?
So you have to go prepared. They're all going to send you materials, whether it's a PowerPoint or whether it's a video. Have a few questions. People always formulate questions when I make the initial introductions of the concept to them. And I always tell them to write down those questions, because that's what you want to ask the franchise development director as you start to work through the process on the intro call. It demonstrates your level of interest. It demonstrates your level of intellect. It demonstrates that you're actually thinking through the process. So read the materials, come prepared, have some questions, and enjoy yourself on the first call, because the second call, you're going to dig into it and really start to see some meat on the bone.
So if you're, let's say, married, or you have a partner in life or whatever it is, and this is an economic decision that's going to require really both decisions, are they with you from day one, or do they absolutely need to be in with the intro call step 1? Where does the other person who doesn't want to maybe go through the weeds with it but needs to?
Well, it's real important. You got to bring your partner along. There's always a brake and a gas pedal in a relationship, and they both need to work together. Okay, but some parts are maybe different. I like it when a spouse and the candidate can work through the process together every step of the way. That's ideal. If there's time constraints, the spouse or the partner needs to be on the introduction calls so they understand firsthand what concept they're talking about. Then they need to, most importantly, be in validation calls, which is later on the process when you're actually speaking to other franchisees. Because if you're a candidate, no matter what you're doing with your spouse, things get lost in translation. So let's break that lost in translation process, get them into the process either full-time or at key elements as you work through it.
All right, so you get through the intro call. What happens next? What's the next step?
So after that, it's unit economics. Unit economics is just a high-level framework of what the business model looks like. And it's really important because I, as a franchise consultant, a franchisor as a franchise development director, cannot make earnings claims, all right? So you are going to be shown information that comes out of the franchise disclosure document. And that's what you have to work with, and that's what you will understand as an introduction to the business from a high-level business model standpoint. And after you get through unit economics, you and I, again, will be getting together for second time. And if we've looked at 3 or 4, one puts the other in context, we'll stack them up 1 through 4. We might peel one off, so we're only looking at 2 or 3. Or 1 if you really fall in love, but usually not the case.
On the unit economics, my assumption is, or at least what people I think would assume, that the people trying to award you a franchise are also putting their best foot forward. And I'm sure there's regulations and stuff that what they can represent. How do they get through maybe that, hey, is this stuff, real is not the real world, is it being represented correctly? So maybe help me think through, because I know when I was going through that, I was like, I'm not sure the context if this makes actually sense. Are you allowed to have, as their advisor type, consultant, an opinion on it? Like when you look at these details, or I'm sorry, these details, the kind of high levels, how do I make sense of it to make sure that it interpret it?
So as a franchise consultant, I cannot comment on your business model at all, or I cannot comment on the financials. As you go through the franchise disclosure document, which is the 3rd step in the process, you'll really focus in on item 7, which gives the overall investment experience of a set number of franchisees. Every year, the franchisor updates their franchise disclosure document. It's regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. It has to be filled with truth. Sometimes it expands as you get more franchisees and more experience. But the most important thing is when you get in there following the unit economics discussion, you will start to peel back the onion on the overall investment. And it will be defined in item 7. So now you say, okay, 1 location, 1 territory, I get it. Overall investment includes these line items and equates to about this much. And then you'll get it. And that's in step 3. And then the other thing on item 19 in the franchise disclosure document, that gives the overall performance of the business from a franchisee perspective. Now, they all have different levels of information in there because they're all at different levels of the maturity of development in their cycle of being a franchise. Some might have 10, some might have 110. But as you work through that unit economics into the franchise disclosure document, you're doing your due diligence on understanding what the business model will look like, and you'll actually build your own pro forma so you can understand what the investment is going to be and what you think performance of the business is going to be. Top line revenue, cost of goods sold, labor rates, ramp to an ongoing year, all those things you start to pull together so you formulate your own financials and believe in this.
So in step 3, which is the financial disclosure document, I think it's FDD, they call it franchise disclosure document. Right. That's when you're going to review that. And to summarize, section 7 and 19 are 2 very key ones.
There's 200 pages of terms and conditions. So let's make sure it's right before you peel apart all 200 pages. And the franchise agreement can't be changed. So you have to read it, and it's written in plain English. You have to understand it. If you need to hire an attorney to go through it, you got to use a franchise attorney, or you spend money and get red lines you can't do anything about. I will help the candidate through that process so they understand it, but focus on item 7 and item 19 after the unit economics and after you receive the franchise disclosure document, because you're really focusing on the business model at that point. Make sure you can invest it and are comfortable and you understand what you think, what you're going to get out of it over time.
So the FDD is interesting. So it is standard every year that it's going to get updated. Is that based on their own fiscal or more calendar year type of thing?
It's typically in March and April, and it varies by franchise, or they have some windows that they can work. So it's based on their timing, and they do it across all states that they are participating.
Got it. Does it make sense then to hold off buying an established franchise or moving forward till after the one's updated in April? Do you see that where people like kind of pause in Q1 and they're waiting for the new stuff to come out? Or is there a strategy you should use with that if I know it's going to be updated at the end of a certain period?
It depends. It depends where you are in the process, where you're in the cycle, what level of confidence you have in your due diligence. Sometimes they're effectively and there's some meaningful change, sometimes there's not. So it all depends. You will work with your franchise development director if you start to cross that path as to whether you should move forward before or after the new FDD is disclosed and approved.
I tend to think people in those positions are doing the best interest, but are there any red flags that you should look for if, people pushing you to go before? Is there anything that comes out that you should be aware of? Like, I'm always looking for the gotchas. I know there's paranoid. I'm just trying to get my paranoid hat on. Hey, if this happens, pull back.
Well, it's interesting. We vet and select the people that we work with very closely. So in our portfolio, if you find someone selling your franchise, call me right away because we got to talk about that. That's not what we're after. We're not selling the franchise. We're working to find the right fit because the brand wants to fit. Franchisee wants to fit. So that's the most important thing. The only thing that kind of misunderstood is if they're sharing with you when the FDD is going to be renewed, they're not doing it from a sales pressure tactic. They're just making sure you understand so you can make the best decision for yourself. And usually through conversations with them.
But I think you're speaking to something too. The people that are awarding franchises that you're going to connect your people you're consulting on, you've gotten to know them over years. And you've seen success with these individuals or groups or whatever it'll be. So you're going in with confidence that I'm not, because your personal brand's on the rep line as well. So that's where having someone in the industry who really knows, there's a big value because you're about to, the next step's called validation. We're going to get into that. But to get the trust built, if you don't have that relationship, it'll come out that maybe you don't know as well as you think you do or something else. So I think that's where I think some of the value adds of being experienced, a thought leader in the space kind of sings, because that's a scary, like tons of information part. And if you got the right guide and coach, you can kind of get through it.
Absolutely. It's the most exciting part of the process. And if you have a spouse that's joining you on this journey, you need to make sure they're included in it because it starts with group calls where you're listening to franchisees existing in the business speak to potential franchisees known as candidates. The franchisor can't lead you to specific franchisees because they need to share them all. You know, there's average, there's above average, and they're below average people. That's why it's the law of averages. So sometimes on a validation call, you might find someone that's average. Sometimes you might someone that's at the top of their game, someone that's at the bottom of the game. You need to see all those things so you can understand who you're going to be. You know, everyone thinks you're above average person, but wait a minute, discover what makes that above average person. Validate the assumptions in your business plan. Understand their go-to-market strategy. Make sure you have the cost per customer acquisition right so you can plan your marketing budgets and you really understand what's going in. So validation is really an exciting piece of it. You'll make friends along the way because once you get through group validations, if you're really doing well in the process, you'll get invited to maybe do some one-on-ones. It doesn't go to everyone because we can't weigh down our franchisees with validation calls. It's got to be organized, or else that's all they'd be doing and not running the business. So, you know, if you get some one-on-one validation calls, that's a kind of a nice thing. You've actually been elevated based on your level of interest and their level of interest in you. So take those and then work through to the final point, which is making your way towards a discovery day or a confirmation day or a team day. They're all the same thing and called the same thing. But you have to be invited to that. You can't just say, I want to go. You get invited.
Your step 4, the validation, is specifically validating other people who already have been awarded franchises. And you as a candidate get the opportunity to talk to any of them. And that's part of the rules. They have to disclose all of them. And you can pick up the phone. Now, they may not pick up. You would think they would. Like those you start making your assessments based on like none of the low performers want to take my calls. Or only you'll make your assessment of that experience yourself as part of the validation. And they want, obviously, that group wants you to be good because their brand is also tied to your brand of what you just did or you're about to do. So that's your time to get to touch some things and push some buttons, right?
Well, you got to think outside the box too. You know, in the car business, we did mystery shops all the time to see if they were actually required. Right? So why not do your own mystery shops? If you're looking at the installation business, get 2 quotes on your home. Why not? See what the process is. That's the best way to show you how awful the competition is or how good the competition. When I validated my business, I walked through the competition in all the markets. And I had my wife and I hired a person to make phone calls to actually see what they were saying about the business. So I want to do my own diligence. I highly encourage that.
I love that. 100% love that. I know when I have people come to my house to sell services, I see this, I go, man, if I ever get in any of this stuff, I'm going to pick this because every guy who showed up here is so bad at process, sales, quoting, understanding the problems, my concerns, asking questions, showing up on time. Like I look at that like there's a gold mine if I can find good salespeople, like right there. So I understand that piece. Step 5. So let me just do a real small recap real quick. There's like a step 0. which is setting up who you could be interested in. And this is where the consultant really value add begins.
Right.
And so the step 0 leads into, hey, let's do your introductory call with actually the people who will award a franchise to you. Step 2 is unit economics. Unit economics is really looking at how the business model is set up and getting another layer of the onion, or maybe 2 down, to understand what you're getting into and what it looks like. And then right after that, I think within a few days, right, they have to send you the franchise disclosure document. I'm not sure the date is. There's a certain time they have to. This is a very regulated process that people need to go through, but understanding what your role in it is what we're trying to explain.
And you need to sign off on it.
So that was my next question. There's a step there before you go to validation. You need to sign off. But there's also a part after step 3 where they can say, hey, we're not interested. We're not going to share our names with it. So you could get kicked out. You have to understand why that happens. You may deselect yourself or self-down. Other people might we really like them. We'd love to get them some names. That's step 4 validation. Now we're, get creative, get in the middle of it. And now step 5. Discovery day. So discovery day, I never got to discovery day, but tell me about this discovery day, what that really means, because you're down to 1 at this point.
So, if it was a blind date in the beginning, you're going to meet the parents in discovery.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. I like that.
So, you're going to get dressed up. You're going to have a little happy hour, get to know each other. You're going to go spend 4 or 5 hours the next day together. You're going to meet the operations team. You're going to meet probably the founders of the company, the president of the company. Some of them are done virtually, but most of them are done in place. So you're going to go see the facilities. You might do a location tour. All that takes place. But the most important thing is you're okay, before you've gone to Discovery Day, you've done all this stuff to get prepared, right? Now you're 90% plus, yes, I'm in. And it's going to be an in-out decision for them and you. Right? And okay, great. I think I could do this. This is right for me. And within 3 days after the Discovery Day, you're going to get a call set up. Are you leaning in or leaning out? Now, before that, they will have decided whether or not you're going to be awarded an opportunity to have that lean in, lean out call. And that's really important because you need to get awarded the opportunity to say yes, whether I'm in or out. If you say you're out, okay, it happens. If you say you're in, great. Then you receive your franchise agreements and your wiring instructions. And within 7 to 10 days, you are wiring funds and signing your agreements. And then you have an onboarding call. Welcome to the family. Let's start planning and opening your business.
So that's step 6 is the Discovery Day, by the way. One of them was really interesting. You actually flew up for a weekend to some cabin. I know I got invited. I was if you get to that point, there's hunting, there's fishing, there's trying nice sky, you're trapped in there. They're gonna get to know you. You show up hungover the next day, you're getting it sounded like fun. That sounds like a long interview, but that's Discovery Day. You exit that, whatever you have, you'll have your reservations. You'll love it. You'll have some more questions, and then you have the step 6, which is they award you the franchise or not. And so if you get to step 6, you're moving forward. All right, you maybe have cash on hand. Maybe you're I don't want to leverage all my cash. I'm going to go get a loan. Where do the financial pieces now start kicking in if you say yes? Or is it done before? I don't know.
Well, way back in step 1, as I make introductions to the franchisor, I introduce you to a financing source. There are 2 companies in the business that lead in financing franchises. By this time, I understand what your balance sheet looks like. So we have talked a little bit about your ability to fund and make sure you're qualified to go through the process. Once you are qualified to go through the process, we'll make that introduction so you can develop a funding strategy. By the time you get to Discovery Day, you need to know how you're going to pay for the upfront fees and then how you're going to fund the total investment. You'll need to go with proof of funds and also a pre-approval for the loan if you're going SBA route, or a plan to roll your 401k, or a HELOC, or just fund it with cash. So that will all be done as part of the process before you go to Discovery.
And I want to make that clear. So I think a lot of people think it's at the end. It's you don't even get to intro call until we can show that you're not going to waste anyone's time downstream. And there's lots of options, like you said, loan. There's ways you can create your own company, put your 401k, buy your own shares. And there's a lot of interesting, challenging ways, and there's a lot of risks and non-risks. And
right.
So you understand that prior to step 1. And not every franchise. So then there's onboarding, welcome kind of to the family, you said, and now you're off. Where's your role end on that then? Is it after they sign, you just keep in touch with them? Where does a consultant's role end in this process?
Well, I don't think it ever ends, because I just had a call with Chris, my placement in Columbus. And we speak he sends me referrals all the time. And I love his referrals because they're qualified. They know what I'm getting into. A referral is the best compliment I could get. But more importantly, he had some questions about the business. Dave, I'm thinking of doing this. And the biggest thing I reminded him today was make sure you leverage your existing franchisees. They're a depth of knowledge that you don't have as a solopreneur without that network. So, if you got a problem, they've already thunked it out and really probably already solved it, and they can share with you how they did it. Or if you have a best practice, go back and tell someone so they can benefit like you are. So, I think to answer your question, the process doesn't stop. I like to check in with my franchisees every 3-4 months. I love to hear how they're doing, how they're celebrating their success, or if they're not celebrating their success, figure out how we can help them. But that's not too many folks. If you know how to follow a playbook and you're a good business person and you're well capitalized, you should do well in your entrepreneurial pursuit through franchise.
Yeah, and I think you just described, you're thinking of it as a partnership and people you get to know and you become friends with, if it's appropriate, not a transaction. So you're paid as part of that. You're commission based on a predetermined number with the people awarding franchises. That's correct.
Yeah, I get my rewards from the franchisors for making a successful place. But for me, I love everyone in the process. I really enjoy my candidates. I become friends with them. I get to know them. They send me their friends. So that's a really important part for things. It's a big decision. And I like to celebrate their successes.
I'll make this observation because I meet a lot of people, as you know, and other people I network a lot. And in this space specifically, when I know a successful person who wants the revenue, wants the commission, but I know they don't particularly need it to get to the next meal or make a mortgage payment. Why that matters is there are people that I know who have intentionally tried to push certain types of franchise because they gave them a higher percentage commission versus the one that I knew would be a better pick when I was kind of early stage looking at some of these things. And I think an understanding, if you're with somebody who's experienced, who's done this lots of times, there's a need met that they already have because they are experienced and they are doing great. So you don't have to be able to ever be compromised where some people sometimes are. And I hate to say that, but that actually happens. People they're thinking about their own checkbooks as opposed to, I'm going to be friends with this person, my reputation's on the line. And if something's like $500 more here or 10, you don't care about that. You care about just getting them to be successful because you want the referral.
Not in my business and not with my colleagues. Yeah, are there people in the industry that do that? I would assume so. Of course, there's always that element. Run for the hills. My point is, if we do this process right, we are talking about you. We're talking about your business characteristics that you're looking for in a business. And if I sway off of that because I might be incentivized, which I'm not, if I sway off of that, it's not going to work, right? We're putting a round peg in a square hole. So I don't run into that issue. People can decide whether they trust me or not. I'm okay with being fired. Like I said, I like business. I don't need their business, but I like to help people, and I wear my heart on my sleeves when we're doing that. And as we go through the process, if we're focused on you, the candidate, that's the guardrails that keep us getting to the right place at the end.
So dispel a myth. From they get a hold of you to sign the paper and wired money, how long is that process? How long can it take? Like, what's the fastest it could take in realistic, and obviously it can go forever, and ideally, but how fast could you change your world to become a franchise owner?
The fastest I've gone with someone is 4 weeks. Okay.
That's fast.
That's
4 weeks and all of a sudden you're in. Holy moly.
Typically it's 6 to 8 weeks. Now, if it goes beyond 8 weeks, something's not right. And usually when people say I got to think about it, that means I'm not going to do it. So if you don't make a decision after discovery day to move forward, 9 times out of 10, you're kind of out. So you self-select out of the process. But so when you think of the process, the fastest I've seen is 4 weeks. If it gets past 8 weeks where something's going wrong, and then once you think about that, most people say, when can I open my business? Well, a service-based business, after you sign the documents, 90 and 120 days, right? And a facility-based business, maybe 10 to 12 months. You got to find a facility, you got to build it out, all that stuff. So there's a time horizon here that you need to plan for as you work through your entrepreneurial pursuits through franchising.
Yeah, and I think from everyone's perspective, if you have someone who's going to have to say yes, you better get them there early in the process. I'd have to guess you don't let people get to 8, probably even get through half this without. I'm not moving forward unless your spouse, we've talked, because like, I know you may run your house, but the truth of the matter is that's why it wouldn't go forward. Because what do you mean you're wiring $200,000 and nope. And so I think if you're out there and you're thinking about this, get everyone involved. Don't make this a secret act. I think your chance for success when you're open and transparent with those around you is probably a factor of success, as well as your ability to be open and transparent. So do you have any comments on that?
No, I just love transparency in the process. I think that's so important. And I ask for that. Like, if you're having second thoughts, tell me. It's okay. If you're thinking about buying something that's existing versus something that's new, tell me. I'll help you with that too. I've had people who have just called and asked. I say, listen, I'm happy to, that franchise is not in my portfolio. I'm not rewarded for it. That doesn't matter to me. If I can help you, let's talk.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of the way it works. Givers get, takers get what they deserve. So I'm all about giving. But if you're taking time and you're taking from the process, it's really self-evident and it just kind of blows up on itself.
And so maybe one of the other myths is the amount of money out of pocket. Could you shed some light on the reality of what's available? And I know you said there's a lot of factors here, but not everyone needs to have a $3 million balance sheet to do this.
No, minimum requirements are $100,000 of liquidity. Liquidity is cash, stocks, equity in your home, something to put down as earnest money or deposit equity money into the business. Right? And then you have to have at least $250,000 of net worth. That's on the lighter end. Typically, people have $1 million on their balance sheet due to $300,000 in liquidity. You're going to have to look at the total investment, and you're going to have to work with your financing source. And you're going to say, okay, what's 10 to 20% or 30%? Typically 20 to 30% that I need to come up with cash. So if you're on a bricks and mortar thing at $600,000, it's 120 to 180 for a single location. Same thing with a service-based business, which has a lower investment threshold. But you're going to have to come with upfront fees. You're going to buy 1, 2, 3 territories. It's going to be $60,000 to $200,000 that you're going to sign a check to get into the business. You have to be prepared for that. I had a candidate that just wasn't prepared for it, and that's okay. Thing is, let's talk about it. Go get prepared when you're ready and you're capable. I'll still be here, I think. So I'll be happy to help you.
If you made it this part right and you're interested, I love transparency in the following. What type of person does this work for and what type of person does it not?
You need to be someone that is self-motivated. You need to be someone that is driven by success. You need to be someone that, is okay with a little ambiguity, but understands that ambiguities disappear because you're going to execute on a business system that's already built. And you need to be a person that wants to wake up and go to work. If you just want to write a check, talk to your broker in stock. But if you want to roll up your sleeves and get to work and put in the hours, so eventually someday you can hover up and watch the team work while you enjoy things that are associated with your lifestyle instead of your work style, then I think those characteristics are kind of getting you to get into the process. But most people at the end of the day, they want 2 things, right? They want freedom and they want flexibility. They want to be free to be their own person. They want flexibility to determine what they do with their own time.
I'll throw this out there. 3 years ago, I was looking at this and I was new to kind of entrepreneurship, so to speak, at the time. I was on the path to go 0 to hero, and I would have been a terrible franchisee owner because I would want to do things my way. And I'm sure that would have came out during the process. But if you have this knack to want to just build your thing I don't think franchise is the way to go. I think you got to go cut your teeth, get punched in the face a few thousand times, because now I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh, that would have been so much easier. because I've done it and I'm like, oh man, I wish someone would have just handed me a playbook and I would have had the wherewithal and just smarts to just follow it. I'd still be challenged following any playbook. But if you're like the person who doesn't like to follow rules, always wants to come up with your own thing, I'd say even if you can qualify, your chance of success would probably diminish as well.
I absolutely agree with that. But what I would add to that is most people that come to me have been creating their playbook for their entire life for their company. Whether they're building training systems or business development, new markets or partnerships, they've been building that stuff for someone else, and they're just tired of building it. They actually just want to go put their execution skills to work, which in many cases, just remember, you don't know what you don't know. And you will often be surprised at where people can drive success, whether that's in giving to the community, building a team, giving your employees, or serving your customers in a way that's fulfilling. So you'd be really surprised. That's the big shout out for me. Because as you get through into this, you've done a lot for yourself to become successful in someone else's shoes. Now it's time to walk those miles in your own shoes and create your own success and create your own wealth. And you can do that through small business ownership, whether it's a franchise or not.
David, thank you for taking me through this. So the 6 steps, it'll be in the show notes, how to get a hold of you. Where do you want someone to go if they want to get in touch with you?
So it's real simple. Go to empoweredfranchisee.com, read to your heart's delight, and book a call with me. There are plenty of book a call buttons on there, and all you have to do is sacrifice 15 minutes of your day or life to see if the process makes sense for you.
And when you go to empoweredfranchisee.com, I haven't read all of it, but I get your week. There's so much information. I would encourage people to read through that stuff. Like, come up and get comfortable with how he's going to work with you and what he can do for you. Because you may be able to save everyone time. Say, I do not want to do anything with franchising, and you're out, and you saved everyone on the planet time. At the same time, you might be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I never even thought of this. I was kind of half in, but now I think just go educate yourself. I think that's a great place to go do it. It's been validated for sure from the hundreds of people you've worked with through the years. So just check it out, empoweredfranchisee.com. Get a hold of David Greenberg. If you put that on LinkedIn, there's like 1.5 million David Greenberg. So empoweredfranchisee.com. So as well. David, thank you for sharing this. This has been very helpful. By the way, I think there's way more to this. This is an overview. These are the 6 steps to expect, some things to think about, but there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of coaching. And if you listen to this, probably even 50% of it, you just got a great start of where to go. And you do need a consultant. You do need someone who can guide you on this journey. Otherwise, you're going to feel lost, or you're going to be vulnerable because someone else is going to know more than you. And so you need someone to kind of help you through that. Anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's perfect. And you can get it at no cost. So value the service, and the service will value you, and let's go to work.
That's a great point. I'll leave it. I don't know if you guys realize, it doesn't cost you anything to work with a consultant. It's almost like it's already built in the model. It's almost like working with an agent to buy a home. They're going to do a whole bunch of stuff for you, so you don't have to educate you. There are different various, obviously, levels of capabilities, but it's to your advantage to work with the right person and not to rush through it, to be comfortable, because this is an investment, right? This is like outside of buying your house. This is probably the most next expensive investment you're going to go make. And so you want to feel confidence in what you're doing with that. And I think you'd be foolish not to do some homework and find the right person to take you on that journey.
Right. That's right.
Thank you. Hey, listen, this has been a special episode for Never Been Promoted. David, thank you once again so much for coming today.
Thank you, Thomas. Have a great day.
I will. And anybody who's made it to this point, you rock. Get a hold of David. Once again, empoweredfranchisee.com. I hope you learned something. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And get out there. Go unleash your entrepreneur. Thank you.